Welcome to the AI Coach by NL Thu. Today, we're not just talking about making choices. We're diving deep into the fascinating science behind them. We're looking at Jonah Lehrer's How We Decide, a complete guide.
Yeah, and this isn't just, a simple guide. It gets into the nitty-gritty of emotion and logic in your brain when you're deciding something.
Exactly. Think of this as your express route, maybe, to understanding the core of why you choose what you choose. And crucially, how to maybe make those choices even better. A shortcut to the main ideas, really.
And Lara, he kicks things off really effectively, doesn't he? With that flight simulation scenario.
Oh yeah, it immediately grounds the discussion.
It really does. It's high stakes, shows the weight of decisions, and right away highlights that essential partnership between our emotions and our logical thinking.
It's not abstract at all. It feels real with tangible consequences.
Mhm.
And what really hit me from that opening was Lehrer's core message. We're not purely rational machines. Our feelings aren't like static getting in the way.
No, not at all. They're actually a vital component, especially when things get intense, right?
Right.
And that's a pretty big shift from how people often think about
For
decisions.
sure. The old idea was always cold, hard logic makes the best choice. Emotion, that's the enemy.
But Lehrer, and he's got the neuroscience to back him up, he argues pretty convincingly that emotions are, well, integral, baked right into the process.
So the brain isn't logic versus emotion.
No, it's more like a collaboration, a team working together, sometimes arguing, but interconnected.
And Lehrer really frames the whole book around two key questions.
Yeah.
Questions we often touch on here at the AI Coach by Neil Nathu.
Yeah, what are they again?
First, how does the human mind actually make decisions, like what's happening under the hood? And second, okay, knowing that, how can we use that understanding to actually make better decisions?
And he uses some brilliant stories to illustrate this. Think about Tom Brady, that 2002 Super Bowl example.
Yeah, the final moments, intense pressure.
Exactly. He wasn't, stepping back and running through some complex logical analysis.
No time for that.
Right. His success there, it relied on honed instincts, that gut feeling developed over thousands of hours of practice and play. It's feeling the game.
Which makes you question things like the NFL's reliance on the Wonderlic test, doesn't it?
It does. The assumption is raw intelligence predicts quarterback success.
But Lair points out, well, the correlation just isn't really there.
Yeah, you see guys who ace the test but don't perform, and then superstars who maybe didn't score as high. It strongly suggests that in those really fast, dynamic situations, that intuitive, experience-based decision-making is often way more critical than just raw processing power.
So how does that intuition work? Lair dives into the science, specifically dopamine.
Dopamine. It's more than just the reward chemical, right?
Much more. It's fundamental to how we learn and, maybe more importantly, how we predict.
That classic monkey experiment with the juice is a perfect illustration.
Tell us about that again.
Well, the key finding was that the dopamine neurons didn't just fire when the monkeys got the juice reward.
Okay.
They fired most intensely right before, when they expected the juice, when the signal predicted the reward was coming.
So it's about the anticipation.
Exactly. It shows our brains are constantly taking predictions, trying to figure out what happens next. Dopamine signals how good those predictions are, driving learning.
That makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Predicting stuff is useful.
Hugely useful. But Lehrer also points out this same system can be, hijacked. It can lead us astray.
Especially in situations that are inherently unpredictable.
Precisely. Like slot machines.
Ah,
The random payout schedule messes with the dopamine system. You get occasional rewards. It keeps those neurons firing, keeps you expecting, even when rationally you know you're losing.
it exploits that pattern-seeking drive.
Absolutely. Our brains are built to find patterns, to learn cause and effect. When faced with pure randomness, that system can misfire, leading to irrational choices.
And it's not just gambling, is it? He talks about our general discomfort with randomness. We want to see patterns.
We do. We impose order even where there isn't any. This can lead to, false confidence, bad investments, all sorts of things based on imagined trends.
So while emotions and instincts are crucial,
They're not the whole story. And this is where Lehrer brings reason back into the picture. Deliberate, rational thought is essential in certain contexts.
like when things are unfamiliar or involve abstract concepts.
Exactly. Or when you have statistical data to work with or face complex moral dilemmas, your gut might not have the right programming for those.
The Challenger disaster example he uses is just tragic.
It really is. You had engineers with strong gut feelings, emotional warnings based on their experience, and, well, some ambiguous data.
But they couldn't provide that definitive rational proof management wanted.
Right. And without that rigorous proof, the emotional warnings were overridden, a catastrophic failure of decision making.
It shows you need both, right? Intuition isn't enough on its own, especially when the stakes are incredibly high.
But then Lehrer is quick to point out logic isn't infallible either.
No, definitely not. We have our biases.
Oh, yeah. Confirmation bias being a huge one. Our tendency to latch onto information that confirms what we already think and ignore stuff that contradicts it.
That can completely derail even the most careful, rational process.
For sure. You think you're being logical, but you're just filtering reality to fit your preconceived notions.
Okay, another really interesting area Lehrer covers is choking under pressure.
Ah, yes, the paradox of skill.
Why do we sometimes mess up things we're really good at when it matters most?
Well, according to Lehrer, it's often about overthinking, trying to consciously control actions that have become automatic.
Like a golfer suddenly thinking about every single muscle movement in their swing during a championship?
Exactly that. The smooth, fluid execution handled by the practiced emotional brain gets disrupted by the rational prefrontal cortex trying to, like, micromanage.
So we have these two systems, roughly speaking. The automatic pilot for habits and skills,
Handled largely by the emotional, intuitive parts of the brain.
and the conscious, rational system for new problems, deliberate thought.
Right. Choking is when that conscious system interferes inappropriately with the automatic one.
Hmm. And he even extends this kind of thinking to morality.
Yeah, challenging the idea that moral judgments are purely rational calculations.
He argues they're often more like instinctive emotional responses.
Largely, yes. Neuroscience suggests our gut reactions to situations, especially involving harm to others, are very powerful drivers of our moral judgments.
The trolley problem is the classic example, isn't it?
It is. Logically, diverting the trolley to kill one person instead of 5 might seem rational.
But the emotional response to actively causing that one person's death is often much stronger, even if the outcome is better numerically. It feels different.
It highlights that tension. Our minds aren't monolithic. Lehrer describes the brain as, well, almost like an argument.
An argument between different parts.
Yeah, different regions, different impulses, constantly competing. You've got emotional drives, rational calculations, future planning, immediate gratification.
So every decision is like the outcome of this internal debate.
Kind of, yeah. It's a negotiation. And sometimes, like in depression, one side say overwhelming negative emotion can kind of shout down the rational parts.
That makes sense. And he uses poker as a fantastic real-world example of navigating all this.
Oh, definitely. Professional poker is decision-making under extreme uncertainty, boiled down.
You have incomplete information. You have to read opponents' emotions, or lack thereof.
While managing your own emotions, avoiding tilt, and calculating probabilities, it's a perfect blend.
You need the gut reads, but you also need the math.
And you absolutely need to learn from mistakes and control those emotional swings. It's a microcosm for so much of life, isn't it?
Lehrer makes that exact point. Life is kind of like a long poker game.
We rarely have all the facts. We're constantly weighing risks, trying to make the best call with limited information, dealing with our own feelings, and trying to understand others.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into How We Decide by Jonah Lehrer, brought to you by the AI Coach by Anil Natu, it really shows that good decision-making isn't about picking emotion or logic.
No, it's about the dance between them, understanding how they work together and when to lean on which one.
Knowing when to trust that instinct, honed by experience, and when you really need to step back, slow down, and do the deliberate analysis.
Yeah, we've seen how our brains are prediction machines, how easily that can be fooled by randomness, and how these internal arguments shape everything we choose.
And remember, this is just scratching the surface. Each part, dopamine, pressure, bias, is a whole world to explore. What really stood out to you as you listened today?
Maybe think about how these insights from the AI Coach by Anil Nathu apply to the choices, big or small, that you're facing right now.
And here's a final thought to chew on. If our brains really are just hosting this constant argument, are we ever truly making one single unified decision? Or are we just, witnessing whichever voice happened to argue most convincingly in that moment?
That's something to think about.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit the AI Coach website for more AI insights by Anil Natu.